The millionaire thought everything was over. The open coffin, his daughter's motionless body, the unbearable pain. But the maid's son noticed something no one else did. And that detail would change everyone's fate. If you love emotional stories, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're watching from. Continuing, the morning sun streamed through the windows of St. Jude's Medical Centre with that golden light characteristic of London in late October. Marina Albright lay in the private room's bed, connected to a series of monitors emitting rhythmic, reassuring beeps. Her face, once pale as marble in a coffin, now held a soft, almost timid blush, as if life were slowly returning, afraid of being too invasive. She opened her eyes slowly. Everything was blurry. The shapes around her were meaningless blobs of color dancing, and she had to blink several times until the world began to make sense again. The first face she saw clearly was that of her mother, Helen Albright, a 52-year-old woman who had always been the picture of controlled elegance. But now, sitting in that chair beside the bed, Helen looked as if she had aged 10 years in a matter of days. Her eyes were swollen, red, surrounded by deep, dark circles. Her hands, always so firm when signing million-pound contracts and chairing board meetings, trembled as they held Marina's hand. "Mum?" Marina whispered, and her own voice sounded strange to her, hoarse and distant as if it belonged to someone else. Helen collapsed. There was no restraint, no pretense. She simply crumbled into tears, pressing her daughter's hand against her own face, wetting it with a cry that seemed to come from a very ancient place within her, a place where she kept all the fears she had never allowed anyone to see. "You're back," Helen wept. "You're back, my daughter, you're back." Marina didn't know what to say. Her memory was a patchwork quilt, loose pieces of sensations and sounds. She remembered being home in her room, feeling a terrible headache. She remembered taking some medicine. Then darkness, a dense, heavy, suffocating darkness. But it wasn't an empty darkness. It was a darkness full of voices. Voices she knew, voices crying, voices praying, and she tried to scream, tried to move her fingers, tried to open her eyes, but her body wouldn't respond. It was like being trapped within herself, a prisoner of flesh and blood. And then, amidst that silent nightmare, a different voice cut through the veil. A childlike voice, clear as crystal. A voice that neither prayed nor cried, but simply asserted with absolute conviction, "She's alive. I know she's alive." It was that voice that pulled her back. It was that voice that tore through the darkness like a blade of light. "The boy," Marina suddenly said, trying to sit up in bed. "Where's the boy?" Helen quickly wiped her tears, composing herself as best she could. "Gabriel, he's here. He and Celia are in the corridor. They haven't left since you were admitted." "I need to see him," Marina insisted. And there was an urgency in her voice that Helen couldn't ignore. A few minutes later, the room door slowly opened, and Gabriel entered. He was small for his 9 years, slight with those large dark eyes that seemed to see things no one else did. He wore patched jeans and a faded Manchester United t-shirt. His feet, clad in rubber flip-flops, shuffled hesitantly across the hospital's polished floor. Behind him, Celia held his shoulders with her hands, as if she needed to lean on him to keep from collapsing. Celia was 33, but looked older. The hard work at the Albright mansion, combined with raising her son alone, had etched lines of weariness onto her face. But at that moment there was something more in her eyes. Fear. Her deep, ancestral fear, as if she knew something far greater than all of them had been awakened. "Gabriel," Marina smiled, extending her hand. The boy approached slowly, almost reverently. When he touched her hand, Marina felt a shock ripple through her body. Not a physical shock, but something deeper, as if an invisible electrical current connected them. Gabriel felt it too, because his eyes widened. "I heard you," Marina said softly, tears beginning to stream. "I was trapped in the dark, Gabriel. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, I couldn't open my eyes. But I heard everything. I heard my father crying, my mother praying, people whispering that it was too late. And then I heard you. Your voice was different. It was like a light. As if you were the only person in that room who could truly see me." Gabriel said nothing. He just squeezed her hand tighter, and Marina realized that he, too, was crying, but silently, the way poor children learn to cry from an early age, without making a sound, without bothering anyone. "I knew you were alive," Gabriel finally whispered. "I don't know how, but I knew. I felt it." Helen watched the scene with a mix of emotions she couldn't name. Gratitude, certainly, but also a growing disquiet in her chest. How had a 9-year-old boy with no medical training, no logical reason to believe what he was saying, been able to perceive what no adult had? What was so special about him? And why did it frighten her as much as it comforted her? The door opened again and Dr. Ernest Faulkner entered. He was one of the most respected neurologists in London, a 60-year-old man with completely white hair and a demeanor that inspired confidence. But at that moment his face was marked by deep confusion. "Marina," he said softly, approaching the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Confused," she admitted. "What happened to me, doctor?" Dr. Faulkner exchanged a quick glance with Helen before replying. "We are still trying to fully understand. The tests we've done so far show that you suffered an extremely rare episode of catalepsy. It's a neurological condition where the body enters a state of near-total suspension. Heartbeats become so faint they are practically imperceptible, breathing so shallow it seems non-existent, and the body loses all capacity for voluntary movement. For all practical purposes, you appeared clinically dead." "But I wasn't dead," Marina said, and there was a firmness in her voice that contrasted with her physical fragility. "No, you weren't. But Dr. Matthew Nolan, who signed your original death certificate, was not to blame. Your vital signs were so suppressed that even with the equipment available at your home, it was practically impossible to detect them. It was only when your mother touched your arm and noticed there was still warmth, and when I conducted a more detailed analysis, that we began to suspect catalepsy." "And what caused this?" Helen asked, her voice tense. Dr. Faulkner hesitated. "We still don't know. Catalepsy can be triggered by various factors: extreme psychological trauma, certain neurological conditions, adverse drug reactions. We are conducting every possible test, but some answers may take time." Marina felt a shiver. There was something the doctor wasn't saying, she could feel it. And by the way her mother was looking at him, Helen perceived it too. "But will I make a full recovery?" Marina wanted to know. "We believe so. You are responding well. Your vital signs are stable. But you will need intensive monitoring for the next few months, and you will need a lot of rest." At that moment the door burst open. Edward Albright entered like a whirlwind. His Armani suit rumpled, his tie loose, his face marked by stubble he would never normally permit. Edward was one of the most powerful businessmen in the UK, owner of a holding company that controlled technology, real estate and communications firms. He was accustomed to controlling everything around him, but his daughter's near death had broken him in a way no crisis meeting ever could. "Marina!" He practically ran to the bed, taking her hand with an intensity that almost hurt. My girl, Dad." Marina smiled through her tears. "I'm okay. I'm here." Edward couldn't speak. He just wept, and it was strange to see such a powerful man collapse like that, so completely, so humanly. Helen approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. And for a moment the Albright family was just that. A family stripped of all power and prestige, vulnerable and grateful to have their daughter back. It was Gabriel who broke the silence. "Your dad cried a lot," he said softly. "At the funeral. He wouldn't stop crying." Edward looked at the boy for the first time, really looked, and something stirred in his chest. He stood up, walked over to Gabriel, and to everyone's surprise knelt in front of him, meeting the boy's gaze. "You saved my daughter," Edward said, and his voice was laden with an emotion he didn't even know he was still capable of feeling. "You saved my girl when everyone, including me, had given up. How can I thank you? What can I do for you?" Gabriel looked at his mother, confused. Celia was paralyzed, not knowing what to say. She had never seen her employer like this, so human, so vulnerable. "I don't want anything, sir," Gabriel finally said. "I just did what was right." Edward smiled through his tears. "You're 9 years old and already a better man than many I know." He stood up, looking now at Celia. "Celia, you and your son are no longer just employees of this family. You are part of it forever. Anything you need, anything at all, just ask." Celia swallowed hard, tears finally escaping. "Thank you, Mr. Albright, thank you." But at that moment, even amidst all that emotion, Marina noticed something. Through the room's window, across the street, atop a commercial building, there was a figure. A man in a dark suit, with something in his hands that looked like a briefcase. He stood still, motionless, looking directly at her room's window. A shiver ran down her spine. "Mum," she called softly, without taking her eyes off the window. "Who is that man?" Helen approached, following her daughter's gaze. But when she looked, the man was gone. There was no one atop the building. "What man, dear?" He was there, in a dark suit, looking this way. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Dr. Faulkner cleared his throat, trying to lighten the mood. "You've been through a severe trauma, Marina. It's normal to have some episodes of visual confusion. Nothing to worry about." But Marina wasn't convinced, and when she looked at Gabriel, she saw that he too was looking at the window, and his eyes were wide with fear. He had seen the man too. That night, after everyone had left and Marina finally managed to sleep, Celia and Gabriel left the hospital to catch a taxi back to the Albright mansion, where they were now temporarily staying in the staff quarters. The mansion had become a security fortress after everything that happened, with new cameras and private guards patrolling the perimeter. But, as they waited on the pavement, a black car with tinted windows pulled up beside them. The rear window slowly lowered, revealing a middle-aged man, angular face, eyes cold as stones. "Celia Santos?" he asked, and his voice was too soft, almost dangerous in its delicacy. Celia held Gabriel close instinctively. "Who wants to know?" "Someone interested in your son's well-being," the man said, pulling a thick envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket. "There's £100,000 here. It's yours. No questions asked, no conditions. You just need to do one thing: disappear. Go to another city, start a new life far from the Albright family, far from this whole business." "Why would you do that?" Celia asked, her voice trembling. "Because your son has attracted attention. Attention from people you don't want to know. And because if you stay, bad things could happen. Not to you, to him." Gabriel cowered against his mother, feeling her fear mingle with his own. "I'm not going anywhere," Celia said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "And the Albright family is protecting us." The man smiled, but it was a humorless smile. "The Albright family doesn't know what they're fighting against. Think about my offer, Celia. You have 48 hours. The window rose and the car drove off, disappearing into the London night. Celia stood there, trembling, her heart pounding. Gabriel looked at her, confused and scared. "Mum, who was that man?" "I don't know, son. But we're going to tell Mrs. Albright. Now." When they got back to the mansion and told what had happened, Helen immediately called Edward, who was still at the hospital with Marina. Half an hour later, the mansion's living room was full. Edward, Helen, Celia, Gabriel, and 3 more private security guards the family had hired. "This cannot continue," Edward said, pacing back and forth like a caged lion. First, the anonymous calls to Dr. Matthew, threatening him to destroy the case records. Now direct threats to Celia and Gabriel. Who is behind this? Why? Perhaps the right question, Helen said slowly, is, what do they want to hide? Edward stopped pacing, looking at his wife. "What do you mean?" "Marina's catalepsy wasn't natural, Edward. I feel it. Something was done to her. And now someone is trying to erase the evidence, remove the witnesses, make everyone forget this happened. But who would do that? And why?" It was Gabriel who answered, his voice small but firm in the silence of the room. "Because I shouldn't have been able to hear her." Everyone turned to look at the boy. "What do you mean, Gabriel?" Helen asked gently, kneeling in front of him. "I don't know how to explain it properly," Gabriel said, looking at his hands. "But when I looked at Miss Marina in the coffin, I didn't just see a dead person. I saw light, as if she was glowing from inside, you know? And I heard a voice that wasn't with my ears. It was here." He placed his hand on his chest. "In my heart, she was calling me. She was trapped and she was calling me for help." A heavy silence fell over the room. "My God," Helen whispered, tears returning. "You have a gift, Gabriel. A true gift." Edward, always the pragmatist, always the skeptic, was struggling to process it. This is impossible. There's no such thing as a gift. Nothing supernatural exists. So there has to be a rational explanation." "Not everything needs a rational explanation, dear," Helen said softly. "Sometimes life is simply bigger than our logic allows us to understand." But even as she said this, she wondered if Gabriel truly had some kind of gift, some special sensitivity. Did that mean other things were happening? Other forces at play? And who were the people who wanted to silence all of this? That same night, long after everyone had gone to sleep, Gabriel woke with a start. He had dreamed of Marina, but not the Marina he knew. In the dream, she was in a dark, cold place, and there were other people around her. People in white lab coats holding syringes and clipboards. Gaz's voice, a voice he couldn't identify, said, "The experiment cannot fail." Not again. Gabriel sat up in bed, his heart pounding. Beside him, his mother slept deeply, exhausted after everything that had happened. He looked at the bedroom window and froze. Outside, in the mansion's garden, illuminated only by the faint light of the streetlights, stood the man in the dark suit. The same man Marina had seen from the hospital. He stood still, completely motionless, looking directly at Gabriel's bedroom window. And slowly, he raised a hand and waved. Gabriel pulled the covers up to his chin, closing his eyes tightly, praying softly as his mother had taught him. When he opened his eyes again, the man was gone. But on the bed, resting as if it had appeared from nowhere, was an envelope. Gabriel picked it up with trembling hands. Inside was just a card, with a message written in elegant letters. "You have opened the door between worlds, Gabriel. Now we will all have to deal with the consequences. Do not fear. I am not your enemy." But they are. And they are coming. Gabriel didn't sleep again that night. And at the hospital, Marina also woke suddenly, screaming, saying she had dreamed of a cold place with people in white, with an unbearable pain in her head, and somewhere in the city, in an unmarked building, a man watched multiple computer screens displaying images of Marina, Gabriel, the Albright mansion. He picked up a phone and made a call. "Phase 2 initiated," he said simply. "The boy knows more than he should. We'll need to accelerate the timeline." On the other end of the line, a female voice, cold and calculating, replied, "Do whatever is necessary. Project Thanatos cannot be exposed, not after 20 years of research. And the girl? If she remembers anything, neutralize her. No traces this time." The call was ended. The storm was just beginning. Marina woke up 3 days later with a mental clarity she hadn't had since before the incident. The doctors said it was a good sign, that her brain was recovering completely. But she knew it wasn't just that. There was something different about her now. It was as if the veil between the real world and something deeper, truer, had thinned. She could feel things she shouldn't be able to feel. The emotions of those around her pulsed like invisible waves that only she perceived. When her psychiatrist, Dr. Camilla Rivers, entered the room that sunny morning, Marina already knew she was tired, worried about something at home, and that she had drunk 3 cups of coffee on the way to the hospital. The doctor hadn't even opened her mouth yet. "Good morning, Marina," Dr. Rivers smiled, pulling the chair closer to the bed. She was a 40-year-old woman, with black hair tied back in a bun, thin-rimmed glasses that gave her an intellectual air. "How are you feeling today?" "Different," Marina answered honestly. "It's hard to explain. It's like I can feel more. You know when you walk into a room and sense that people were arguing before you arrived? It's like that, but much more intense." Dr. Rivers jotted something down on her clipboard. "That's interesting. Near-death experiences, or altered states of consciousness like catalepsy, can leave some neurological after-effects. They are usually temporary." "It's not an after-effect," Marina insisted. "I know the difference. This is real." The psychiatrist observed her for a long moment. "Do you trust me, Marina?" "I do." "Then tell me the truth. What do you really remember from the days before the incident?" Marina closed her eyes, trying to organize the fragments of memory that floated in her mind like puzzle pieces. "I was at home. I had just come back from college. I was studying for my final architecture exams. My head started to hurt. It wasn't a normal pain, doctor. It was like someone was drilling into my skull from the inside out. I went to the bathroom and took a painkiller I always used to take. But this time the taste was different. I remember thinking, this is strange, but I took it anyway. And then? Darkness, but not immediately. Before I passed out, I saw someone, a silhouette in my bedroom doorway. But I couldn't see who it was. Everything became blurry. And then, the void." Dr. Camilla stopped writing, her face growing more serious. "Marina, are you saying there was someone in your room? Someone who shouldn't have been there? I don't know. It might have been a hallucination. It might have been real. I can't be sure. Did you tell your parents about this? Marina shook her head. No, they're worried enough as it is. And I'm afraid of what it might mean. What are you afraid of, Marina? She looked at the psychiatrist, her eyes filled with raw vulnerability. That someone did this to me on purpose. That the catalepsy wasn't an accident. The silence that followed was heavy as lead. Those are very serious accusations, Dr. Camilla said at Janate. If you truly believe that, we need to involve the police. No, Marina said quickly. Not yet. I don't have proof. What if I'm wrong? What if it's just paranoia in my head? But what if you're right? Marina had no answer to that. Meanwhile, at Alistair Manor, Gabriel was having his own crisis. Ever since that night he found the mysterious envelope, he hadn't been able to sleep properly. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of images that made no sense. Laboratories lit by fluorescent lights, people screaming, enormous syringes, and always that feeling that someone was watching. Celia was growing increasingly worried. Her son, usually so cheerful despite all of life's difficulties, was becoming quiet, introspective, scared. She decided she needed to do something. That's why that afternoon, she did something she would never have dared to do under normal circumstances. She knocked on Edward Alistair's office door. "Come in," his voice sounded from the other side. Celia slowly opened the door. The office was immense, with floor-to-ceiling mahogany bookshelves filled with books, a Persian rug that probably cost more than a popular car, and a desk so large it could serve as a bed. Edward was sitting behind it, reading glasses perched on his nose, sifting through some papers. "Celia," he took off his glasses, surprised. "Is there a problem?" "Mr. Alistair, I need to talk about Gabriel." Edward gestured for her to sit, and Celia obeyed, awkward, in the leather chair that was probably worth 2 months of her salary. "He's not well. Ever since that night, ever since the envelope, he's been having terrible nightmares. Yesterday he woke up screaming, saying there were people who wanted to hurt Miss Marina. That there was a cold place where they did bad things to people." Edward leaned forward, his face growing serious. "What kind of things?" "Experiments." He uses that word. Experiments. A muscle in Edward's jaw twitched. "Celia, I need to tell you something. But you must promise it will stay between us." "I promise, sir." "I hired a private investigator, someone discreet, reliable. I had him investigate everything that happened to Marina in the days leading up to the incident. And he discovered some disturbing things." Celia felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of things?" Edward picked up a folder from the desk and opened it. Inside were photographs, documents, handwritten notes. 3 days before Marina fell into catalepsy, she received a delivery, a package with no sender. Inside was a box of medication, painkillers. She had mentioned to her mother the week before that she was running out of headache medicine. She thought Helen had ordered them online and forgotten to mention it. But Mrs. Helen didn't send them. No. And when my investigator managed to get a sample of the remaining pills in the box, he took them for analysis. "Marina, these weren't ordinary painkillers. They had been tampered with. There was a complex chemical substance mixed in, something my analyst had never seen before, something that, in his words, seemed designed to induce a state of apparent death." Celia brought a hand to her mouth, horrified. "Someone tried to kill your daughter. Worse, someone tried to make her appear dead. And they almost succeeded. But who would do such a thing? Why?" "I don't know yet, but there's more." Edward turned a few pages in the folder. "My investigator traced the package's origin. It was sent from a courier company, but payment was made through an untraceable offshore account. However, the courier company's security cameras captured the person who dropped off the package." He turned a photograph for Celia to see. The image was grainy but clear enough. A man in a dark suit, angular face, the same person who had approached Celia in front of the hospital. "It's him," Celia whispered. "The man who offered me money to make Gabriel disappear." Edward nodded grimly. "Yes, and according to my investigator, this man isn't an ordinary criminal. He's a former government intelligence agent. He worked on covert operations, classified projects. Now he works as a consultant for those with enough money who want unpleasant things done cleanly." "My God," Celia was trembling. "But what does your daughter have to do with all this? Why would someone do this to her?" "That's the question that keeps replaying in my mind. Marina is an architecture student. She's not involved in the family business. She has no enemies. She is, for heaven's sake, a 22-year-old girl who likes to design buildings and go to the cinema with her friends. Why would someone make her a target? It was then that something clicked in Celia's mind. Mr. Alistair. Gabriel said something strange yesterday. He said Miss Marina had been marked. When I asked what he meant, he said he couldn't explain, but that she had a different light than other people. A light someone had placed in her. Edward grew very quiet. Marked how? I don't know, but what if it's not about what Miss Marina is, but about what they did to her? What if this was a test? The suggestion hung in the air like toxic smoke. A test for what? Edward asked, but his voice made it clear he was already reaching the same terrible conclusions as Celia. To see if they could make a person appear dead and then return. To see if they could control it. Edward stood up abruptly, walking to the window. Outside, London pulsed with its chaotic energy, millions of lives crossing paths without ever truly touching. But there, in that office, they were talking about something that seemed straight out of a science fiction movie. If you're right, Edward said slowly, then Marina wasn't the victim of an assassination attempt. She was a guinea pig in an experiment. And Gabriel, Celia continued, her voice breaking, saw something he shouldn't have seen. He interfered with something that should have remained secret. That's why they're trying to push us away. It's not revenge. It's containment. Edward turned to her. No one is going to hurt your son, Celia, I promise. I will use every penny I have, every connection I possess, to protect both of you. You saved my daughter. Now it's my turn to save you. But even as he said this, Edward knew he was dealing with forces he didn't fully understand. Forces that had resources, knowledge, and apparently no moral scruples. That night, Marina received an unexpected visit at the hospital. She was alone in the room. Her parents had gone for a quick dinner at the hospital, when the door opened and a woman she had never seen before walked in. The woman was about 50, with grey hair tied back in a ponytail, and grey eyes that seemed to see right through people. She wore a simple wool coat and carried a worn leather bag. "Hello, Marina," she said, her voice surprisingly soft. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" "My name is Teresa Maxwell, and I came in here because I need to talk to you before it's too late." Marina pressed the nurse's call button, but Teresa raised her hands in a gesture of peace. "Please just listen to me for 2 minutes. If after that you still want me to leave, I will. But you need to know the truth about what happened to you." Marina hesitated, then released the button. Something about that woman, something in her eyes told her she wasn't a threat. 2 minutes, Marina said. Teresa approached, maintaining a respectful distance from the bed. 20 years ago, I worked as a researcher in a private neuroscience laboratory. A place funded by private money, without government oversight, without real scientific ethics. We were working on something called Project Thanatos. The name sent a chill down Marina's spine. The goal was to develop a substance that could induce a state of suspended animation in humans. Complete apparent death, but reversible. The military application would be obvious. Soldiers who could play dead in enemy territories, agents who could simulate their own deaths for covert operations. But we were young, ambitious, and didn't think about the ethical implications. "What does this have to do with me?" Marina asked, but her voice was trembling. "Because Project Thanatos was never shut down. It just went underground, to darker places. And you, the people selected for the most recent tests, you were chosen for a specific profile. Young, healthy, no history of heart or neurological problems, and all of you have something else in common. What? That you have sensitivity. Not in the emotional sense, but in the literal sense. A latent ability, usually dormant, to perceive things beyond the normal 5 senses. Project Thanatos discovered that these people respond better to the compound, and that when they return from the state of suspended animation, their abilities are amplified." Marina felt the room spin. "This is madness. It's the truth. And the boy, Gabriel. He also has this sensitivity. That's why he was able to perceive that you were still alive. That's why his voice reached you in the void. You two are connected by something science still doesn't fully understand. Why are you telling me this?" Teresa blinked, and for the first time Marina saw real emotion in her eyes. "Because I did something terrible 20 years ago. Something I can't undo, but I can try to prevent it from happening again." "You weren't the first, Marina. And if they get what they want, you won't be the last. How many? Marina whispered. How many people have they done this to? That I know of, 12. In the last 10 years. 7 of them awoke, 3 didn't return. And 2. And 2 what? Teresa closed her eyes. 2 disappeared after waking up. No one ever saw them. Again. The horror of it hit Marina like a punch. They killed them, or worse, they kept them. 4 more tests. Marina couldn't breathe properly. And what do you want me to do? Go to the police. Tell them there's a crazy scientific conspiracy using me as a guinea pig. Who will believe that? No one, Teresa admitted. That's why you need to be smart. You need to pretend you don't remember anything, that you suspect nothing. Let them think the experiment failed, that you're just a lucky girl who survived a rare medical condition. Meanwhile, you and your family need to gather evidence, find out who is funding this, and then only then make everything public. And Gabriel. Aratsulisim, protect him, at all costs. He is special in a way he doesn't even understand yet. And they will want to study him too, or silence him. The door suddenly opened and a nurse walked in. Oh, sorry to interrupt. I thought you were alone, Marina. Marina looked to where Teresa had been, but the woman had disappeared, as if she had never been there. I was, Marina said, confused. I am alone. The nurse gave her a concerned smile. Are you all right, dear? I heard voices. I was talking to myself. Sorry. After the nurse left, Marina looked at her pillow. There, where it hadn't been before, was a small business card. No name, no title. Just a phone number and a handwritten message. When you're ready to know the full truth, call me. But be prepared. The truth is darker than you imagine. TM. Marina hid the card under her pillow the moment her parents returned. How are you, dear? Helen asked, kissing her forehead. Tired, Marina lied. Just tired. But inside her something had changed. She was no longer the innocent girl who studied architecture and dreamed of building beautiful structures. She was now someone who had stared into the abyss and seen the abyss staring back. And worst of all, she knew Gabriel was in danger. A real, tangible, deadly danger. That same night, in an unmarked building in the industrial district of London, a meeting was taking place. 7 people sat around a glass table, their faces illuminated by the cold light of computer screens. Containment has failed, a woman with a cold voice said. The Alistair girl is starting to ask questions, and the psychiatrist treating her is too competent. She might start connecting the dots. Neutralize the psychiatrist, an elderly man suggested, taking a sip of brandy. Too risky. Another death linked to the Alistairs would draw too much attention. No, we need to be more subtle. What about the boy? The boy is the real problem. He shouldn't have been able to detect the state of suspended animation. None of our previous tests showed such high sensitivity in someone so young. He is an anomaly. Anomalies must be studied, the cold woman smiled, not destroyed. What are you suggesting? That we abduct a 9-year-old from the home of London's most powerful family? I'm suggesting, she said slowly, that we create a situation where he comes to us voluntarily. Children are predictable. They respond to emotional stimuli. Threaten the Alistair girl, and the boy will want to protect her. Use that. One of the men at the table shifted uncomfortably. This is going too far. We were testing a substance. Now we're talking about manipulating children, threatening families. Where does this end? The woman turned to him, her eyes like ice. It ends when we have completely mastered death. When we have the power to decide who lives and who merely appears to live. Do you think governments wouldn't pay billions for that? Do you think militaries wouldn't kill for this technology? But at what cost? At whatever cost is necessary. The man stood up, pushing his chair back. I cannot be a part of this. It's inhumane. Then you're out, the woman said coldly. But remember what you signed when you joined this project. You know too much. If you talk to anyone at all, you know what will happen. The man swallowed hard, nodded, and left the room. As soon as the door closed, the woman looked at the others. Does anyone else want to leave? Silence. Excellent. Then let's proceed to phase 3. Bring the girl back, and the boy. But this time we'll do it right. In the darkness outside, a figure watched the building. A man in a dark suit with a briefcase in his hands. He took a mobile phone from his pocket and made a call. They've accelerated the timeline, he said. They're planning to take the girl and the boy. We need to act now. On the other end of the line, Teresa Maxwell sighed. So this is it. 20 years and nothing has changed. They never stop. What do you want me to do? Protect them. Use every resource you have. And Teresa? Yes? They must prepare for war, because that's what's coming. The storm was about to break over all of them. Marina was discharged from the hospital 5 days after Teresa Maxwell's visit. The doctors were satisfied with her recovery, though still confused about what exactly had caused the catalepsy episode. Dr. Peterson prescribed weekly follow-ups and a battery of neurological tests that would extend over the next 6 months. But Marina knew that no examination would reveal what had truly happened to her. The return home was bittersweet. Alistair Manor, which had always been her refuge, now seemed different. Every shadow hid a potential threat. Every noise in the night made her wake up with a start. And worst of all, she knew her family was in danger because of her. Gabriel was waiting at the entrance when Edward's car pulled into the driveway. He had an expression too serious for a 9-year-old boy, as if he had aged years in a matter of days. When Marina got out of the car, he ran to her and hugged her tightly. "You're back," he said, and his voice was laden with relief. "I'm back." Marina smiled, running her hand through his curly hair. "Thanks to you." "They're going to try again," Gabriel said softly in a way only she could hear. "I can feel it. There's a darkness coming. It's getting closer." Marina felt a shiver but kept a smile on her face so as not to alarm her parents. "We'll talk later, okay? Somewhere safe." That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Marina waited until she was sure the house was silent. Then, using her mobile phone as a flashlight, she walked silently to the annex where Celia and Gabriel were living. She knocked 3 times softly on the door, the code they had agreed upon earlier. Celia opened it, surprised to see her there. "Miss Marina, what?" "Please, I need to talk to both of you. It's important." Minutes later, the 3 were sitting in the small living room of the annex. Marina recounted everything. Teresa's visit, Project Thanatos, the other victims, the danger they were all facing. Celia turned pale, her hands trembling. "My God," she whispered. "They want my son." "They want both of us," Marina corrected. "But we won't let them. We need to be smarter than them." "How?" Gabriel asked. He was sitting on the floor, hugging his knees, but his eyes were alert, intelligent. Marina took Teresa's card from her pocket. "There's a person who can help us, someone who knows the secrets of this project. But it will be dangerous. They are being watched. If we make contact, they'll know," Gabriel finished. "But we don't have a choice, do we?" Marina looked at that slender boy, who should have been concerned only with video games and football, and felt her heart clench. He was being forced to grow up too fast, to deal with horrors no child should ever know. "No, we don't have a choice," she admitted. Celia hugged her son close. "I'm going to talk to Mr. Edward tomorrow morning. He needs to know everything." "No," Marina said. "Not my father. At least not yet." "Why?" "Because my father will do what he always does. He'll try to solve it using money and power. He'll hire more security guards, he'll try to buy silence, he'll make a fuss, and that will attract even more attention. No, we need to be discreet. We need to investigate on our own first, gather real evidence, and only then fully involve my family." "But you're just a 22-year-old girl," Celia protested. "How are you going to do this alone?" "I won't be alone," Marina looked at Gabriel. "I have you two. And I have this." She touched her own temple. "Whatever they did to me, it left something behind. I can feel things now. Notice when someone is lying. Sense intentions before they become actions. It's frightening, but it can also be useful." "Me too," Gabriel said softly. "I've always been able to feel some things, ever since I was little. But after that day at your funeral, it became much stronger. It's like a door was opened inside me." The 2 women looked at him. "What kind of things do you feel, son?" Celia asked, concern evident in her voice. "People. I can feel what they feel. And sometimes I see things that haven't happened yet, pieces of the future, sort of, or from other places, even far away." "That's why you knew Marina was alive," Celia realized. "Yes, and that's why I know 3 men are watching the house right now. 1 on the front street, 1 in the back garden, and 1 in the building across the way. They have surveillance equipment, cameras, microphones. They're waiting for us to do something wrong." Marina felt her blood run cold. "Are you sure?" Gabriel closed his eyes, concentrating. "I am. The man in front has a scar on his face. The one in the back is nervous, keeps looking at his phone. And the one in the building. He's the leader. He's the most dangerous. The man in the dark suit, Celia whispered. No. Gabriel opened his eyes. That one's different. The man in the dark suit isn't an enemy. He's trying to protect us. But this other one is going to try and catch us soon. Marina made a decision. Then we need to act before they do. Gabriel, can you take me to where the man in the suit is? Mentally, I mean, show me. I think so. But it's going to be strange. All of this is strange. Let's try. Gabriel extended his hand and Marina took it. The moment their skin touched, the world around them disappeared. Marina felt as if she were falling or flying, she couldn't tell the difference. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. She was seeing through someone else's eyes. She was in a small dark apartment, looking through a window with binoculars, and what she saw was the Albuquerque mansion, lit up against the night. A voice sounded, and Marina recognized it as the voice of the man in the dark suit, though she couldn't see his face from her current perspective. Teresa, they've accelerated the timeline. 3 operatives positioned around the property. They're going to make the extraction tomorrow night, during the security guard shift change. We have to warn them, Teresa's voice replied over the phone. We can't use conventional means. They're intercepting all communications. Phones, internet, everything. Then how? There's a way. But it will require me to expose myself. They'll know I was helping. The day after tomorrow, everyone will know everything anyway. Do what you need to do, Victor. Victor. Finally, the man in the suit had a name. The vision fragmented, and Marina found herself back in the annex room, panting, breaking out in a cold sweat. Gabriel was pale beside her. Did you see? He asked. I did. They're going to try and catch us tomorrow night, during the security guard shift change. Celia stood up, panicking. We need to call the police. And say what? Marina asked. That there's an international scientific conspiracy trying to kidnap us. That we had a psychic vision showing illegal surveillance. Celia, they won't believe us. And worse, there might be people from the police involved in this. We don't know how deep this conspiracy goes. So what do we do? Wait for them to catch us? No, Marina said, a cold determination taking over her. We turn the tables. If they want to catch us, we'll let them. But on our terms. That's madness, Celia protested. It's the only way to find out who's behind this, who funds Project Thanatos, where they keep the other victims, and how to end this once and for all. You're talking about offering yourselves as bait. Celia was incredulous. Not just me, us, Gabriel and I, but we won't go alone. Marina picked up her phone. I'm calling Teresa. She and Victor will have to help us. We need a plan. The call was answered on the second ring. Well, hello? Teresa's voice was cautious. It's me, Marina. I know you said to call when I was ready. Well, I'm ready, and we need to talk. In person. Tonight. There was a long pause. You know they're watching? I know. But Gabriel and I have the abilities. We can leave without being seen. Another pause. You never cease to surprise me, girl. There's a 24-hour coffee shop on Main Street, near the Grand Central subway station. Come in 2 hours, and come prepared to hear things that will change your life forever. The call ended. 2 hours later, Marina and Gabriel walked through the streets of New York City. They had exited through the secret passage that connected the mansion's basement to an abandoned neighboring house, a remnant from Marina's grandparents' paranoid times during the military dictatorship. Celia had stayed behind, pretending the two were asleep in case anyone checked. The coffee shop was exactly as Teresa had described, small, slightly grimy, lit by annoyingly buzzing fluorescent lights. There were only 3 other customers, a couple arguing in low voices and a man sleeping at a table. Teresa was sitting at a back table, a cup of cold coffee in front of her. Beside her was Victor, and now Marina could finally see his face clearly. He was younger than she expected, perhaps in his early 40s, with angular features and eyes that had seen too much. Sit, Teresa said without preamble. We have little time. Marina and Gabriel sat down. A sleepy waiter came to the table, but Teresa dismissed him with a gesture. You need to understand the magnitude of what you're facing, Teresa began. Project Thanatos isn't just a crazy scientific experiment. It's a multi-million-dollar operation funded by a network of pharmaceutical corporations, military-industrial complexes, and extremely wealthy individuals who see the conquest of death as the ultimate frontier of human power. How many people are involved? Marina asked. Directly, maybe 50. Indirectly, hundreds, perhaps thousands. Scientists, doctors, security agents, bureaucrats who make documents disappear, politicians who ensure investigations never progress. It's a hydra, Marina. Cut off one head and two grow in its place. But there has to be someone at the top, Gabriel said. Someone who calls all the shots. Teresa and Victor exchanged a look. There is, Victor said. A woman. We only know her as Dr. Adrienne. No one knows her real last name. She's a brilliant neuroscientist, with PhDs in several fields, but completely devoid of any ethical sense. She founded Project Thanatos 25 years ago, when she was just a graduate student with grand ideas. Over the years, she recruited others, seduced investors, built an empire in the shadows. And she's here? In New York City? Marina wanted to know. She is. The main laboratory is somewhere in the industrial zone. We've never been able to pinpoint the exact location. It's a completely off-the-grid facility, with no official records, no address. But we know that's where they conduct the main tests. That's where they keep the victims who haven't fully awakened. That's where they store all the data, all the evidence. And that's where they'll take us if they manage to catch us, Marina concluded. Exactly. Which is exactly why we can't let them catch you. What if we let them? Marina proposed. What if we use this to our advantage? Teresa leaned forward. Explain. They want to study me, right? They want to understand why the experiment worked on me, why I came back, and they want Gabriel because he has abnormal sensitivity. What if we go voluntarily but prepared? With a plan? That's suicide, Victor said flatly. It's the only way to destroy them from the inside, Marina retorted. You yourself said it's a hydra. There's no point in attacking from the outside. We need to get to the heart of it, to the laboratory, to the data. We need evidence that cannot be denied or destroyed. And how do you plan to get that evidence if you're trapped, probably sedated, and being experimented on? Teresa asked, but there was a glint of interest in her eyes. Marina looked at Gabriel. Because I won't be alone. And because whatever they did to me, it gave me more than just psychic sensitivity. I can feel when something is hidden. I can perceive lies. I can connect with things that would normally be beyond perception. And Gabriel can do even more. I can see through walls, Gabriel said quietly. Not with my eyes, but with my mind. I can feel where things are, like those dolphins that use sounds to see in the dark. And I can project, send what I see to other people, like Marina. Teresa grew very quiet. Do you realize that this confirms exactly what Thanatos was trying to achieve? To create humans with amplified abilities through altered states of consciousness. I know, Marina said, which makes me even more motivated to bring this down. Because if it worked on me, they'll keep doing it to other people. How many more need to die or be trapped in a state of living death until someone stops them? Victor leaned back in his chair, studying Marina with new respect. You're stronger than I thought. But strength isn't enough. If we're going to do this, we need a real plan. We need communication, backup, a way out when everything goes wrong. Do you have contacts? Marina asked. I do. Investigative journalists, a few federal police officers I know are clean, even some people from the district attorney's office. But they need proof, irrefutable proof. Then that's what we're going to get, Marina said with a determination that surprised even herself. They spent the next 2 hours planning. Teresa drew a rough map of what she remembered of the laboratory's layout. Victor explained the likely tactics that would be used for the extraction. Gabriel closed his eyes, and in an effort that left him trembling and sweating, managed to sense the general location of the laboratory, an industrial area near the Hudson River, in a complex that had officially been abandoned for years. When they left the coffee shop, the sun was already beginning to color the New York City skyline. The city never fully slept, and there were already vendors selling cheese bread and coffee, taking up their positions on street corners. Are you sure about this? Teresa asked one last time before they parted ways. Certainty is no longer a word that applies to my life, Marina admitted, but it's what needs to be done. Victor placed a hand on Gabriel's shoulder. You're brave, kid. Braver than many adults I've known. But if at any point you get too scared, there's no shame in giving up. Gabriel looked at him with those big, serious eyes. My mom always says that courage isn't not being afraid. It's being afraid and doing it anyway. I'm very scared. But I'm going to do it anyway. Because it's the right thing to do, Victor nodded, respectfully. As they returned home via the same secret route, Gabriel held Marina's hand. Marina? Yes? If we don't come back from this... Thank you for making me feel important, for making me feel like I can make a difference. Marina stopped, knelt in front of him right there on the empty street, and looked directly into his eyes. You will come back. We will. And when we do, you'll be a real hero. Not the kind of hero we see in movies, but the kind that matters. The kind who does what's right even when it's hard, even when it's scary. And you? I'll be the girl who finally found a purpose beyond designing beautiful buildings. I'll be someone who made a difference. Thanks to you. They hugged there, a 22-year-old woman and a 9-year-old boy, united by something much greater than both of them, much older than their young lives. United by the strange and inexplicable ability to touch the invisible, to see the hidden, to feel what others could not. When they returned to the mansion, they found Celia awake, pacing back and forth in the annex room, almost frantic with worry. Where were you? I was terrified. We were preparing, Marina said, for war. That night, Helen Albuquerque had a strange dream. She dreamed that Marina was in a cold, dark place, surrounded by white lights and the sounds of machines. She tried to reach her daughter, but there was a glass wall between them. And Marina looked at her and said, Don't worry, Mom, this is necessary. Trust me. Helen woke with a start, her heart pounding. She looked at the clock, 4:37 a.m. Edward was sleeping soundly beside her, snoring lightly. She got up, went to Marina's room and quietly opened the door. Marina was sleeping, or at least appeared to be, but her lips were moving, whispering something Helen couldn't understand, and there was a soft, almost imperceptible light emanating from her, as if she were glowing from within. Helen closed the door softly, her heart heavy with a premonition she couldn't name. She knew with that inexplicable maternal certainty that something big was about to happen, something that would change everything. In the secret laboratory, Dr. Adrian watched multiple screens showing surveillance footage of the Albuquerque mansion. Her eyes, cold and calculating, studied every movement. She left the house tonight, an assistant commented. She met with Teresa Mendonça and Victor Saraiva. I know, Adrian said calmly. Let them meet. Let them make their plans. It's part of the experiment. Experiment. The real test was never just catalepsy, you fool. It was always about what comes next. The abilities that emerge, the connection between sensitive individuals. The boy and the girl are developing a bond that transcends conventional scientific explanation. They are exactly what we needed. But if they have a plan, let them. Plans give a false sense of control. When they come, and they will, they'll be exactly where I want them to be. And then finally we can complete the research. We can understand the full mechanism. And then? Adrian smiled, and it was a smile that was utterly inhuman. Then we replicate. On a scale, imagine an army of people with these abilities completely under our control. Imagine intelligence agents who can sense lies, soldiers who can predict attacks, leaders who can influence masses with just their thoughts. We're not just conquering death. We're conquering humanity itself. The assistant felt a shiver but said nothing. The countdown had begun. Night fell over New York City with an almost palpable urgency. Marina was in her room, dressed in dark clothes, her heart pounding in her chest. She had left a letter for her parents, explaining enough for them to understand, but not so much that they could stop her. The letter was hidden under her pillow, to be found only after everything had already happened. In the annex, Gabriel was doing the same. Celia was beside him, tears silently streaming down her face as she held her son's hands. You don't have to do this, she whispered for the 10th time. You're just a child. This isn't your responsibility. But it is, Mom, Gabriel said, and there was a wisdom in his eyes that shouldn't have been there, not yet. From the moment I saw Marina in the coffin and knew she was alive, this became my responsibility. Some people are born for things like this. I think I'm one of those people. Will you come back to me? Celia asked, her voice breaking. I will. I promise. And when I come back, we'll be able to live without fear, without looking over our shoulders, without hiding. Celia pulled him into a tight hug, so tight it almost hurt. You're so brave. Braver than I ever was. I learned from you. Mom, you were always the strongest. At 10:47 p.m., exactly at the time Victor had predicted for the security guard shift change, 3 men dressed in black approached the Albuquerque mansion. They were professionals, trained in infiltration, armed with tranquilizer guns and state-of-the-art communication equipment. What they didn't know was that Marina and Gabriel were waiting for them. The moment the men entered through the back garden, disarming the security system with suspicious ease, Marina and Gabriel walked voluntarily towards them. The operatives were visibly confused. "You came to get us?" Marina said calmly. "Then take us. But make it quick. My parents will realize we're gone soon." The team leader, a muscular man with a scar on his cheek, spoke into his earpiece. "Pace, we have an anomalous situation. The targets came to us voluntarily, requesting instructions." There was a pause, and then a female voice responded, a voice Marina recognized from her shared dream with Gabriel. Dr. Adrienne. "Perfect. Bring them, both of them." An unmarked black van waited 3 blocks from the mansion. Marina and Gabriel were gently placed in the back seat, with no need for violence or restraint. They exchanged glances, communicating silently through that inexplicable bond they had developed. "Ready?" Marina's eyes asked. "Ready," Gabriel's eyes answered. The journey lasted 40 minutes. They crossed the city, passing over the illuminated bridges of the Hudson River, until they reached the industrial zone Gabriel had identified. The complex was exactly as Teresa had described, officially abandoned, surrounded by high walls and without any external identification. But inside it was completely different. Fluorescent lights gleamed in immaculately clean corridors. The constant hum of medical and scientific equipment filled the air, and there were people, dozens of them, all wearing white lab coats, all moving with purpose. Marina and Gabriel were led through several corridors, passing through doors that required fingerprint and facial recognition to open. Finally, they arrived at a large room that seemed to be part laboratory, part meeting room. In the center, there was a long glass table, and around it several people sat. And at the head of the table, she sat, Dr. Adrienne. She was about 55, with brown hair streaked with gray pulled back into an elegant bun, gold-rimmed glasses, and eyes of such a clear blue they seemed transparent. There was a cold beauty about her, like an ice sculpture. When she smiled at Marina and Gabriel, there was no warmth in her expression. "Welcome," she said, her voice cultivated and refined. "Please have a seat. No one will harm you here. In fact, you are our most honored guests." "Guests who were kidnapped," Marina said, but sat down nonetheless. Gabriel sat beside her, his hand seeking hers under the table. "Technicalities," Adriana waved her hand dismissively. "You came voluntarily, from what my men reported, which leads me to believe you know more than you should. Has Teresa spoken with you?" "What if she has?" Marina challenged. Adriana sighed. "Teresa has always been too idealistic for this work. She never understood that scientific progress requires sacrifices, that some people must suffer so that humanity as a whole can advance." "You're talking about human guinea pigs as if they were statistics," Marina said, anger rising in her voice. "These are real people, with families, dreams, lives. And all of them are contributing to something greater than their individual lives," Adriana replied, her calm unshaken. "You two especially. Do you know what you are? Rarities, statistical anomalies. Less than 0.001% of the human population possesses the kind of natural psychic sensitivity you have. And when amplified through the process of induced catalepsy, the possibilities are endless." "That's why you used me as a guinea pig," Marina said. "You were testing if you could awaken these abilities." "Exactly, and it worked magnificently. You not only survived the process, but emerged from it with amplified capabilities. Heightened empathy, extrasensory perception, even rudimentary telepathy when in contact with another sensitive." She looked at Gabriel. "And you, boy, you are even more special. Born with the gift already active. Imagine what you could become with our help." "I don't want your help," Gabriel said firmly, squeezing Marina's hand. "And you won't use anyone else for your experiments?" Adriana laughed, but it was a joyless sound. "Oh, my dear boy, do you really think you can stop me? Look around you. This complex employs 200 people. We have financial backing from some of the most powerful corporations in the world. We have political protection in multiple countries. What can two young people with underdeveloped abilities do against that? It was then that Marina felt it. A presence in the room, not physical but real nonetheless. She looked at Gabriel, and through his eyes she knew he felt it. Two, the other victims. The people Adriana had transformed and never let leave. They were there, somewhere in the complex, and they were conscious. They were trying to reach out, trying to communicate. Marina closed her eyes, focusing on that sensation. And then, as if a door opened in her mind, she saw a room in the basement. 6 people connected to machines, bodies motionless but minds awake, trapped, not in a coma, not sleeping, but in a state of perpetual suspension, conscious but unable to move, to scream, to ask for help. A particular hell that had lasted for years. "You keep them alive," Marina whispered, absolute horror in her voice. "The victims who didn't fully wake up. You didn't let them die because you were still studying them." Adriana's face hardened. "They are valuable for research. Their neural patterns provide crucial data. They're conscious," Marina screamed, standing up abruptly. "They can feel, think, they're screaming for help and no one hears." "That's impossible," one of the other scientists at the table murmured. "A state of deep catalepsy doesn't allow for consciousness." "But it does," Gabriel said, also standing up. "I felt Marina when she was like that, and now I'm feeling them. All of them. They're begging to be freed, to be allowed to truly die if they can't truly live." An uncomfortable murmur ran through the room. Some of the scientists exchanged troubled glances. Marina realized that not everyone there knew the extent of what Adriana was doing. It was Victor who appeared first. He entered through the back door of the room, gun in hand, federal police badge hanging from his neck. "Dr. Adriana Santos," he said formally, "you are under arrest for multiple violations of human rights, illegal human experimentation, kidnapping, and homicide. Everyone in this room is detained until further notice." Chaos erupted. Some scientists tried to flee. Others raised their hands immediately. But Adriana merely smiled. "Victor Saraiva, I always knew you'd turn. But do you really think you got here on your own? That it was your superior investigative skill? Please, I let you come. This is part of the final experiment." "What experiment?" Victor asked, but his voice held a note of uncertainty. Adriana pressed a button under the table. The room's doors automatically locked. Gas began to stream in through the ventilation ducts. Not lethal, Marina immediately realized, but sedative. "The final experiment," Adriana said calmly, as everyone in the room began to sway, "is to see if your psychic gifts can save you when physical reality conspires against you. If the mind truly can transcend the body, in the way my theories suggest." Marina felt her legs weaken. The world began to blur. Gabriel fell to his knees beside her. Victor fired his weapon, but he was already too dizzy. The bullet harmlessly hitting the ceiling. And then, in that moment of absolute despair, something extraordinary happened. Marina and Gabriel, both struggling to remain conscious, reached for each other instinctively. Their hands touched, and at the moment of contact, a wave of energy surged through both of them. Not physical, not measurable by any scientific instrument, but absolutely real. The 6 people trapped in the basement felt it too, and at the Albuquerque Manor, Helen suddenly woke up screaming her daughter's name. In her apartment, Teresa fell to her knees crying without understanding why. In a village in the countryside, a woman who had survived Project Thanatos 3 years ago felt an urgent call. All of them, connected by that thin line of sensitivity that made them special, felt Marina and Gabriel's silent scream, and they answered. Marina couldn't explain afterward how it happened, but somehow in those seconds as the sedative gas pulled her into unconsciousness, her mind expanded. Not just to Gabriel, but to all those who shared the gift. And together, in some inexplicable way, they created a wave. A wave of pure consciousness that swept through the complex like an invisible tsunami. The machines holding the victims in suspension short-circuited. The security systems failed. The locked doors opened. And outside, drawn by something they couldn't explain, a full team of federal police and 3 vans of investigative journalists arrived at the complex simultaneously. Teresa had done her job. She had coordinated everything, waiting for the signal. And the signal had come, not by phone or radio, but through that inexplicable connection that linked them all. When Marina regained consciousness, she was on a stretcher being carried out of the complex. Blue and red lights from police vehicles illuminated the night. Gabriel was on another stretcher beside her, also waking up, confused but alive. "Gabriel," she called, reaching out her hand. He held it, squeezing tight. "Did we do it?" "We did." Around them, dozens of police officers entered and exited the complex. Scientists were being handcuffed. Evidence was being collected. TV cameras filmed everything. And, most importantly, 6 stretchers were being carefully carried out. The 6 victims who had been kept in a state of suspension, finally being taken to real hospitals, where they could receive appropriate care and, hopefully, be truly awakened. Dr. Adriana was led away in handcuffs, her face finally showing emotion, absolute fury. As she passed Marina, she stopped. "You don't understand what you've destroyed," she hissed. "This could have saved millions. It could have changed the world." "Changed for the better?" Marina asked. "Or changed for a world where people like you decide who lives, who dies, and who gets trapped in between?" Adriana didn't answer. She was led to a police car, and Marina knew she would never see her again. Edward and Helen arrived minutes later, having been alerted by Victor. Helen ran to Marina, taking her in her arms with surprising strength for someone so elegant. My daughter, what have you done? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would have tried to protect me," Marina said, finally crying, all her repressed emotions pouring out at once. "And this was something I needed to do. For myself. For all the other people they hurt." Edward hugged both of them, his own tears wetting Marina's hair. "You were so brave. So recklessly, terribly brave. Don't do that again." "My heart can't take it." Celia came running, pulling Gabriel into her arms, covering him with kisses and tears. "My boy, my precious boy, you came back. You promised and you came back." "I always come back, Mum," Gabriel said, smiling through his own tears. Teresa approached, leaning on Victor. She looked like she had aged 10 years, but there was relief in her eyes. "You did what I couldn't do in 20 years, she said to Marina and Gabriel. "Thank you. Thank you for being braver than all of us." In the days that followed, the story exploded in the British and international media. Project Thanatos was exposed in detail. Corporations were investigated. Politicians who had provided protection were arrested. And the 6 victims slowly, painfully were brought back to full consciousness. Marina recovered completely. Her psychic abilities diminished over time, returning to more normal levels, though she still had moments of exceptional intuition. Gabriel retained his gift, but learned to control it better, not to let the emotions of others overwhelm him. 6 months later, on a sunny April morning, Marina was in her room, working on a new architectural project. But this wasn't just about beautiful buildings. It was a rehabilitation center for victims of illegal human experimentation, a place where people could relearn how to live after unimaginable traumas. A soft knock on the door. "Come in." Gabriel entered. Now 10 years old, a little taller, a little less frail. He carried a letter. "This arrived for you," he said, handing her the envelope. Marina opened it. Inside was a photograph. 7 people smiling, in wheelchairs or leaning on walkers, but alive, truly alive. The 6 victims of Project Thanatos plus 1 they had discovered elsewhere during the investigations. With the photo, a simple note. "Thank you for freeing us. We are learning to live again, the ones who returned." Marina felt tears come, but these were tears of joy. She showed the photo to Gabriel, who smiled. "We did it," he said with awe. "We really did it." "No," Marina corrected, putting her arm around his shoulders. "You did it. You had the courage to shout the truth when everyone else had given up. You saved not just 1 life, but 8, including mine." Gabriel blushed. "It was teamwork. It truly was. The best improbable team that could exist." They stood there, looking out the window at the manor's garden, where spring bloomed in vibrant colors. Life had returned, not just for them, but for all who had been touched by the darkness of Project Thanatos. And though the scars remained, they would always remain, something new was growing over them. Hope, strength, the certainty that even in the darkest moments, the light of human courage can shine. Marina looked at Gabriel. "What are you going to do when you grow up? Do you still want to be a football player?" Gabriel thought for a moment. "I think I want to help people, like what we did, but in a way that doesn't involve being kidnapped and gassed." Marina laughed. Good choice. The world needs more people like that. People who care, who don't give up. Like you, like both of us. Outside, Helen watched the two through the window, Edward beside her. He put his arm around her. Our daughter has grown up, he said softly. She truly has. And what an incredible woman she's become. And the boy, he's part of the family. Now forever. Edward nodded. He had given Celia an administrative position in the company with a salary that ensured quality education for Gabriel. Because some debts cannot be paid with money, but they can be honored with opportunities. That night, as London pulsed with its chaotic and infinite energy, Marina had a dream. But it wasn't a nightmare this time. It was a light dream, of flying over the city, of seeing all lives intertwining, all stories crossing paths, and at the center of it all, a simple and absolute truth, that humanity's greatest strength lies not in its technology, its scientific knowledge, or its power. It lies in the capacity to care, to see others as equals, to have courage when all seems lost. It's what a 9-year-old boy had when he shouted that a girl was still alive. It's what a mother had when she protected her child against unimaginable threats. It's what Marina had when she decided to voluntarily enter the wolf's den to save others. And it's what all of us have, dormant within us, waiting for the right moment to awaken and shine.